Well, we have that severe thunderstorm finally came in. I think we have probably another hour to kill. So, what else would be normal to talk about than World of Warcraft? I think Mad Season, if you don't know of a Mad Season show, probably does one of the best historical analysis of the rise and fall of Blizzard and World of Warcraft in particular, giving the whole context to both the Blizzard company, the gaming community, the technology of the era, along with the historical societal trends to give context to all of it, and then goes very much in depth about very specific issues within game as well. So he covers a vast swath of World of Warcraft history and Blizzard history and even gaming history, and it's by far, I believe it's one of his most popular videos. But I mean, it's a banger of an entrance, dude. It's so sick. I've probably watched it like 5 times plus, and the review from Asmongold, also watching it, probably watched that like 5 times, if not more. Additionally, Asmongold's take on it, along with Mad Season and Asmongold's reaction to, or not Mad Season, excuse me, Act Man. Love that dude. Super based. And Asmongold's reaction to Act Man as well, on the rise and fall, or the decline of Blizzard, I believe was the title. And just stellar. I mean, it's probably those two examples alone, even though they're covering the same topic, just the epitome of like what YouTube is for. I wouldn't even call them content creators. I think content is so shallow. I mean, Mad Seasons is a borderline masterpiece, and Act Man's is a goddamn classic for that historical take on Blizzard. And where I think the real problem lies, and hopefully this picks it up because I don't have my mic, it's just the mic with the pocket. I think where the real problem lies is the moment, I think, well, one, as I remember, maybe repeat some issues that Mad Season and Ackman both touch on. But one of the things that I could recall is, even, I think there's a number of factors. One of it being the player base themselves, allowing for certain behavior. But I think it's a factor, but I think it's one of the most insignificant ones. And it's more of the developers that play the larger factor. And the point of video games, I think, is what is the purpose behind them. And while I don't believe necessarily in all of it's for escapism, it could be purely for joy, or experiences that you can still extrapolate and bring into the reality, or the real world. And the line is often blurred because if you're playing that video game, obviously inside the world of the video game is not our reality here, but it's still very much real, and it has a very real impact. And I think for the millions of World of Warcraft players, it was some of the craziest experience at that time in the life. For me, at the time when I had just joined in 2006, I believe it was like a month right before Burning Crusade was about to come out, and I got to level 50 and wasn't even I don't even think I hit 60 when Burning Crusade came out. I ended up having to kind of scramble a level, but I was in 7th grade when Burning Crusade came out, or going into 7th grade. And that game changed my life in terms of, one, it was the first MMORPG that I had ever played. I tried EverQuest, but I think I was a little too young at the time. It was just a little too technical for me. So it was the first real MMORPG, I think, for me. And like that vastness in a game where there was no like linear playing, but was the cultural aspect, or I guess the communal aspect is what I'm trying to say within it. I remember going on TeamSpeak and also Vent, and I think I did Skype, and I can't remember which one I did first. It wasn't Skype, but I think it was TeamSpeak, and I quickly transitioned to Vent, if I'm remembering this right. And either it was on TeamSpeak or Vent that it was the first time I spoke to people outside of my own country, and it was some Europeans, I believe. I can't even remember which country, like Eastern European, like Poland or Estonia or something like that. And I just thought, like, how crazy is this? And this is also before Xbox 360 and anything really else connecting that amount of players. Simply, I was addicted to it. I freaking loved it. I loved my character. I was a night elf hunter named Tyrant Shadow. And looking back, I didn't really pick it up what I was doing until Wrath of the Lich King. It was really towards the end of the Burning Crusade that I understood, how to actually raid properly and things like that. But I'm not going to get into that today, at least. I think one of the main historical, like, key moments that you could point to and go, yep, that's the decline. I do think people were moving on with their lives in other manners, not to say that they're moving on for the better or the worse. But for me, for example, I remember making excuses to not hang out with my friends just so I could play more World of Warcraft. And then I started getting into more and more sports and girls, and I kind of made a decision at some point being like, hey, this game is consuming me. Do I want to, spend my time in this world, in Azeroth, which I freaking love, in the Outlands? Or do I want to start making, like, my own life and socializing as much as I did in World of Warcraft, socializing in real life further, and essentially experiencing and leveling up in real life and treating that as an MMO in some capacity. So while I think it's a significant factor, the player base, and as they were growing up, a lot of people, I would posit, or I would first say that a lot of people just grew up and had other life obligations, or chose to value other things over World of Warcraft. I still think, regardless, it holds a special place in our heart. But what I think, while that's a significant factor, I posit was, would you not think that then how the game was played would be the ultimate driver away, and not be able to have a retention of the initial loyal player base? For example, there was a lot of quality of life issues that they've fixed over time, but there's a trade-off where there's a difference between quality of life and essentially being antithetical to the purpose of the game. And what I mean by that is Dungeon Finder, and I think that's a historical moment that people point to very much often, where part of that, it was always about the journey, and you kind of took that element out of it. It was, you were proud to be in those dungeons and raids, and yeah, there was a lot of grinding in terms of like quests and other stuff that I think that could have been shifted, but elements of like travel and communal aspects like that didn't need to be expedited, and that didn't necessarily need to be improved in those ways. I think the balancing was one thing that they would lead to improve, but that those aspects of like balancing of classes, maybe like currency made, leveling experience, questing, like there's quality of life improvements there. But to get to those, as into travel, that was not the point to basically, because it turned eventually devolved into, hey, you could just sit in a city and then just spam Dungeon Finder, looking for group or whatever, looking for raid, and it just took away that aspect. It took away the heart of World of Warcraft. The other thing is when it became essentially store options, I think was the next, if not even more significant than the looking for a dungeon or looking for a raid or group or whatever in Dungeon Finder, was the store, buying using real world money. I generally play a game, or I played World of Warcraft because you are looking to experience that reality. The moment you blend both realities, and I have to turn this off just because there's so many bugs starting to come out. The moment you start to blend both realities takes away from the purpose of living and being engrossed into Azeroth. So when you start using your currency, your real world currency, you're taking away from the accomplishments of the character. And if you're making those accomplishments less, what's the purpose of even doing it even more? And I really think at the core, it's those two aspects alone. And I think there's so many others that then daisy chain off of those. But you can definitely see it also at the Activision Blizzard merger and some of the decisions. I think in hindsight, Mists of Pandaria wasn't that bad. And I think with Warcraft 3, or 3, where Shadow Stormsong, I believe, was a lower character. Sorry, there's so many bugs around. That he was an actual character that, like, Pandaria to me was possible to be, or plausible to be in Azeroth. And I wasn't off-put by that. But what I thought that was actually more indicative of was the appeasement to the Chinese market, both the game store and the actual Mists of Pandaria. And I think they created both purely for the Chinese market. And you can see how when you appease to that type of consumer who's interested in that type of material, it's not necessarily the consumer who should be vilified, even though those actions could be, but to the game maker who put money over morals, essentially, money over gameplay. And you chose to lessen the quality, you as in Blizzard chose to lessen the quality of the game because you could essentially make a quicker buck by having people buy various things in game, with real world currency in game store purchases. That was that MOBA style, pay to play, pay to win, was popularized, I think, in China, with that Chinese consumer market, that style. And so the Activision Blizzard merger also just took that one step further of, hey, we're getting away from the lore and we're just caring about making money. And when that happened, there was really no turning back. And so I think, like, just to wrap this up, how I would fix it, which I think it's almost too late in some stands, like it's dead and gone, and you can't bring back the past. And nor do I think we should try in some capacity, but it is sad to know that it's ended, but I guess that's life. And I'm speaking all nonchalantly about it, but it is impactful for a lot of people and myself. Like how special that place was. And to know that, like, how it's just been tainted over the world to the point that I think you can officially call it dead. And it's just diverged so greatly from where it originally set out. I lost my train of thought, but I guess what I was saying was the one thing I would do is you play video games. Yes, there's the often argument of escapism, but to engross yourself in that world, it is a game. And when you blend the two, I think you just defeat that purpose. and you might as well be doing something in the real world at that point. And so to me it was, hey, get rid of in-game currency. You shouldn't be able to buy items. It also diminishes accomplishments and the items that you earn. It was a big deal to see somebody be at even 60. It was a big deal to see somebody be on a mount. It was a big deal to see someone in anything but shitty armor for the most part. And the moment you can start buying that, essentially, even cosmetically, you know, you took away from that specialness. So I would absolutely get rid of 100% anything that you can buy with real world currency beyond the subscription of the game. And the second thing I would do is, I know what one more point I wanted to make. The second thing that I would do is also get rid of looking for raid, looking for group. There should be that, but you guys should still then have to meet up and then go to the location. And I think there's some quality of life things within the dungeon that say, I believe it was for Mardon Downs. I can't even remember. The one that's kind of like the sunken temple. It's not sunken temple, but it's like a temple that's sunken. I'm blanking on it. But anyways, when you died there, you would have to freaking spawn so far away at the graveyard to get back. And I don't think that's necessary, but I do think there could be some quality of life that takes from aspects of Final Fantasy 14. That like you really have to spawn so far away and spend so much of the game walking in that aspect. So that's what I would do. I mean, you still looking for raid, looking for group, leave it, but you guys still have to physically meet up and not just spawn there. Sorry for this downpour. Hopefully this all came out pretty clear. The last thing I was going to say was the large issue wasn't that World of Warcraft Classic or Vanilla, needed to become a thing. You needed to fix your core gameplay, because now what we see is 5 different World of Warcrafts. You know, you have retail, classic plus, essentially, with Season of Discovery, hardcore, and I'm blanking on the other one. But you're not fixing the problems, and you're just dividing up the gameplay, the gamers, And the issue was, hey, don't bring back World of Warcraft Vanilla. The issue is fix the current game, so then everyone will want to play with those elements. And I see World of Warcraft Hardcore as something in that direction. It should be a blend of some of the elements that we're seen in Classic or Vanilla, but with the difficulty also of Hardcore, but you do still get to go to the graveyard. And the way retail is, I agree where Asmongold kind of talks about this, where like, I don't want to be the champion. You know, I do want to live out, because you put yourself in that construct within the MMO, and you don't get to kind of explore the free world anymore. You're then almost suckered into then the linear timeline of doing the main campaign, so to speak. So it's more like fixing the elements of retail is the actual long-term solution, not creating other types of World of Warcraft. You're not fixing the game. You're just separating the player base. And lastly is the technological limitation. I think Asmongold touches upon this. In an ideal world, it would be all one server. It could handle millions of people, and that would and hopefully we get to see that day, and that would really feel like an open world if everybody was on one server, or if anything, something in between where there's tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, on one single server, and really feel like the open world. But that's a technological limit that's maybe out of the reach of Blizzard and stuff.